Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Welcome back.
Hey, wow, I feel like we were just here.
I always feel like we were just here. This is like a never-ending odyssey, this show.
You guys are my bright spot, so thank you very much.
We are covering Invisible Man this week. So anybody that's a fan of the old Universal monster movies, 50% of this episode will be right up your alley because along with Invisible Man, we are covering the original Creature from the Black Lagoon. Always one of my favorites, and obviously it's one of Jeff's because he picked it for this week.
I did. And I'm not alone because I posted a little sneak preview on our Instagram page last night, and resoundingly everyone said, it's the best monster in the Universal features. So people like the Hillman.
A late addition to the Universal cadre. I think maybe
he's
even
probably
the last
one of the most.
official,
You think about like Shape of Water and even Hellboy, and you know he's been borrowed from a couple times.
See, what is that saying that we're already talking about Creature from the Black Lagoon and not our main feature? But let's get into it.
Right,
Invisible Man.
Let's get into it. Yes.
Invisible Man, starring Elizabeth Moss. For anybody that's a fan of hers from either The Handmaid's Tale or Mad Men. This is her first big lead role in a movie. She's been in movies before.
She carries this movie on her shoulders.
Oh, she does. She is, if there's any bright spot to this, it is her. I may be giving away my hand.
You're showing your hand already. Wow.
But she plays Cecilia, and she is trapped in an abusive relationship. The movie opens with her trying to escape her boyfriend, Adrian. Played by Oliver Jackson Cohen. Now, the camera's panning around this house. It's in the middle of the night. She wakes up. She has drugged him in order to get away. So you get the sense that this is a dangerous guy to begin with. If she needs to go through these links to get away from him.
I actually, that's exactly what I wrote. I said, Adrian must be a real dick if she's going to this link to get away from him.
And this house is like a millionaire's house. And it is revealed a little bit later, very vaguely, what Adrian does and why he has so much money and what he is able to do a little bit later on. But we're not there yet. She escapes. It's a very tense scene, actually.
Oh, the first hour of this movie is really... I actually had to turn it off because I was so... My anxiety was getting... It's very well... We didn't talk about... I don't know who this director is. Lee Whannell?
Lee Whannell.
Lee Whannell?
Yeah. It's the same thing. Like, I actually wrote down in my notes, the last time I felt so tense watching a movie was when I saw Us last year. Yeah. Like, right from the start, you feel so much tension because she's sneaking around.
Yeah.
And you're so, like, I feel like she's such a good actress. She creates empathy for her character without even talking.
Yeah, no, there's no talking in the first 10 minutes alone. Right. It's just her sneaking through the house.
You know her story. On a basic level, you know her story.
Oh yeah, everything is spelled out for you right there in her actions.
And that scene where she kicks the dog bowl.
I know. Like my heart was pounding.
Yes. Yeah, no, Skylar watched this with me, my daughter, and I said, you know, and again, the last couple of weeks have been a little overwhelming anyways, but this, just for whatever reason, I don't like these suspense movies. But the build up on this was just so crazy, and you were just so invested in this person getting away. And like I said, you're not even, he's sleeping. You don't know who he is. You don't know what he looks like. And yet you got this sense that this guy is so evil that she's got to go to this extent to get away from him. And it's really just, it's nerve wracking.
This scene is the most set in reality. this can happen, you know? So that's what makes it, there's so
People
much at stake
People
here.
live with this fear every day. I mean, there are people out there. It's unfortunate, but the one thing we didn't talk about, which last week's feature, which was The Hunts, these are both Blumhouse productions.
Yeah.
These guys are cranking out some serious movies lately.
She gets out of the house. She climbs over the security wall on the perimeter of the property, runs into the woods, and is waiting there on a dirt road that runs adjacent to this property. And this scene is very tense as well because her pickup is not there when she makes it to the road.
Yeah, her
so
sister.
She's standing there waiting, and it's silence, and there's woods, and she's looking around in the woods at every noise that's coming out of it. And finally, the car comes, and it's her sister that's coming to pick her up.
Yeah.
Her sister doesn't know what's going on.
But
Apparently,
meanwhile, we didn't mention the fact that as she was escaping, because she kicks the dog bowl, and then you're immediately like, all right, where's the dog? And there he is. She's sneaking out through the garage, and the dog's waiting there, and he's whimpering in the last ditch.
And the dog is like, don't leave me with him. Come on.
So she compassionately tries to take off his tracking collar and accidentally sets off the alarm on the car.
And now you know he's even a bigger jerk now because he electrocutes the dog on a daily basis, right?
I'm sure the dog had it coming. So anyways, but yeah, so then as she's scaling the wall, you see his bedroom light come on. So now he's awake. So that leads into it as well. That intensifies when she's in the woods. And especially when you see the headlights coming, you're like, that's him. It's him. But no sooner does she get in the car than he shows up and punches through the window.
And then they're gone.
Yeah.
And you don't see his face, which I think is
very interesting. That's a very interesting decision on their part.
Because
I actually don't see his face a little bit later on either.
We never actually get to meet Adrian. He really is invisible, and yet his presence is just permeating throughout the beginning of this film because she is in abject terror. She won't go out of the house.
Yeah. And looking back on this and talking through this opening scene, it makes me wonder if this would have been a much better movie if it just stayed a straight, if they didn't go through all these machinations of the invisible suit or whatever. Tech, just somebody that's trying to overcome this abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it works as a good allegory, because for people who've been in these situations, their abuser is an invisible man who continues to haunt them. So I think actually it works on the level of allegory. And like Jeff said, I think the first hour especially, like my heart did not stop pounding because the effects are like really subtly done, like they're not
because what you want to do, the movie's called The Invisible Man, so you know from the beginning what she's about to encounter, and the camera wants you to watch her because there are long scenes where she's in a corner of a room doing something, and yet if you start panning around and you see little shimmers. So something, at one point she stops and she turns on because like when you just feel like someone's watching you, you feel like someone's in the room, and she conveys this so. Yeah, I found myself holding my breath on this movie. It was, it really was suspenseful. It was much more than I thought I was getting into.
I let out my breath quite a bit in terms of exasperated sighs during this movie.
See, we're gonna have an interesting conversation then because I really like this movie.
There's two things at work here. So like. If you look at it purely from a plot point of view, like every so-called twist in the plot is predictable. Like there was not a single thing that happened that was a twist that either me or my husband didn't say, oh, this has happened. No, like when she fainted, I was like, she's pregnant. He swapped out her birth control. Like I knew that away.
As soon as that became a plot point, you knew that she was pregnant.
Well, even when she goes to the lawyer's office and meets the brother, I immediately was calling it that.
The brother who looks like he'd be more comfortable at a kegger than he would be in a suit. This is a lawyer. Come on.
Right.
So like a lot of the from the plot standpoint, there's a lot of things that are predictable. But I think that the tension is so well developed, especially in the first hour. And then Elizabeth Moss is such an incredible actress because she's so willing to be vulnerable. You really feel shields down. Her emotional her emotional nakedness, basically. She's just completely out there and she's so good at it.
The camera plays well into that as well because there's a lot of those up close, very unflattering shots of her just unraveling
And she looks like a woman who's unraveling, which is the
Yes.
other thing, is that a lot of actresses aren't willing to look unglamorous on
Correct.
screen.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
like in a normal movie, I feel like you'd have an actress who might have like, you know, she's like, it looks like she hasn't washed her hair, but she definitely still has makeup on, you know, like she
Yep.
clearly, like she has dark circles under her eyes.
She's
like
raw. Yeah.
she's not, you know, she's just willing to sort of put herself out there physically and emotionally. I just think she really, really elevates this movie, probably maybe to a place it doesn't even deserve, but she's fantastic in it.
She does have a very unusual face. And I think her
Yes, it's not
face
a Hollywood
translates
pretty.
to that kind of a feeling. So it's almost like she's got resting, unraveling face. That's Elizabeth Moss. And The Handmaid's Tale, and it's almost to the point of irritation. It takes advantage of this seemingly every 5 minutes. So remember all those Frodo in distress close-ups at the end of Return of the King?
Yeah.
That is all over The Handmaid's Tale. But it's done in a subtle way and a more effective way in this movie. So yes, so I think that she is great portraying this character and this situation that she's in. So she goes to stay with an old friend who is a cop.
Yep, James.
A very male model looking cop who you could see the 8x10s the producers were going through. Oh, this guy looks good.
He was well built, my friend. He was.
That happens to be the romantic interest of her sister. So she's staying there and she starts to see and hear weird things. And she's convinced that Adrian is still haunting her and is kind of screwing up her life without anybody believing her. There's that scene where she goes on a job interview. She brings a portfolio with her. She opens it up and there's nothing there.
Right.
And then she collapses. Is it because she's pregnant? Did she get drugged? Or both?
Well, what we didn't mention is the fact that she's in lockdown, hiding in James's house.
Because she's afraid that he's going to find her.
He's going to come find her. And basically, sister comes in and says, you don't have to worry anymore. He's dead. He killed himself. And she's immediately like, that's not possible. That's not who and what he was as a person. And then she receives a letter from his estate, I guess, that she has to show up and he's going to give her $5 million. And you see it right then and there where they say, except for the fine print. And you're like, oh, I wonder what's in the fine print. Oh, unless you murder somebody or go crazy.
Right.
And
now this makes no sense in hindsight.
This is a lot like The Hunt, which is you enjoy it for what it is, but when you really look back and you start thinking about it, it does not hold together at all.
Right.
Because there's some serious lacks of it. Just that in particular makes no sense whatsoever.
But
and that's
the
where
setup
I said
is that the Adrian has committed suicide.
Correct.
The brother is telling her that he has left her this money, this $5 million. So she immediately uses it. She's going to put her friend's daughter through college.
Sydney. Yep.
And she's going to rebuild her life.
Yep.
But while this is happening, strange things are going on around her. The movie doesn't cut any corners. It's not asking you, well, is she crazy or is he really there? It's setting up that he's there from the get-go.
You get enough.
The title, The Invisible Man.
Correct.
Right?
I mean, right, exactly. Unless that would be genius if there
was nobody there and she was crazy.
Time.
Yeah. But you see his breath behind her when she's standing out on the porch. He causes the stovetop to burst into flame as she's
right, because he turns up the flame. It's real subtle too, because at first you're like, something just happened, right? You say the knife.
He took the knife. He takes the knife, which I guess she doesn't notice is missing.
Right, and then suddenly the pan is smoking, and you realize he turned the heat up. On the pan.
She had walked out of the room. Yeah.
Like those are like really nice things that you can do on a low budget just to kind of create that.
Yeah, that because like again, this character who we never even met, and again until there's a knockdown drag out fight sequence, it's all like it's just like knotted tension on your shoulders because you're just like
right.
She's
getting framed. There's one scene where she's with the daughter. Adrian punches the daughter in the arm. Just as the cop is coming in, her father, everybody thinks that Cecilia did it, that struck after they're having this heated conversation about Adrian, that she struck her. And now he's like, well, you got to leave at this point. And now everybody thinks that she's nuts. She goes to Adrian's house, and this is the big reveal. It's like he's Tony Stark. This is...
Right.
Well, I mean, you see all that stuff when she's leaving.
I was going to say, they laid it out right at the very beginning.
They
see
did. And then they give these throwaway things, an optical specialist. So this guy builds a one-of-a-kind prototype superhero suit expressly to stalk his girlfriend. Like, how
I don't know.
how
if
does
it
this
was
guy
expressive.
become a
See, I don't-
millionaire if he is so unhinged that this is all he thinks about? You don't
I
see him
didn't-
like building stuff. You don't
I
see
didn't
him
think
like
that though.
in meetings.
I
You
didn't
don't
get
see
that
him
either.
like heading a corporation. He's a child. Every time you see him at the end, he's got the mentality of, like a 13-year-old.
Well, I mean,
that's
I
how
think
he looks at the world.
the suit was probably something he built for the military. You have
Military.
to
That was my
assume
take, right.
that he's going to sell it.
Because
But-
go ahead.
But I think that it's because you're seeing things from her point of view. So from her point of view, he is only the monster who's obsessed with her. So I think that like from the point of view of the writers, you're not worried about developing Adrian's character or understanding anything about him. Like, you're only seeing it from her perspective. So I think that like that information that you're looking for like is limited deliberately because this is about Cecilia.
Right.
To that point, he's just a construct to build her story that makes
Right.
no sense on his own.
Right.
Well,
So-
the minute you get that speech from the brother, because at one point he leaves the pills that she dropped when she was escaping and was poisoning him with. He left them in her bathroom. So now she knows that, he's trying to mess with her. So he goes back to the brother, and then the brother reveals that, yeah, you know what? My brother, I hate him too. I always hated him as well. So immediately you're like, all right, now the brother's got a motive. He left $5 million to the girlfriend, nothing to the brother. So he's trying to discredit her to get the friggin' money, which was not that far off from what was really going on. But and then she gets this brilliant idea to call his cell phone, and it's ringing in the attic. The call is coming from inside the house. It's like, hold on.
But
this guy is dead. Who's paying his phone bill?
Yeah, but
How
why
is
would
his
he have
phone-
his phone with him?
Why
It's
would
going to
he
ring
have
if
his-
somebody else calls him.
Right.
If his brother
well, they all
calls
think
him,
he's dead. Right,
well, his
but
brother knows he's not
brother knows
dead,
he's
right?
dead. So stuff like this falls apart.
I can just picture that conversation. Why are you calling me? I'm stalking
correct.
right now.
Right,
Oh,
correct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
except that it turns out he brought the phone on purpose.
To leave
Left
her,
it
leave
there.
her, yeah.
Yeah,
And
to
you
freak
find
her
right,
out.
so she crawls up into the attic, and again, this is all tension building, because he can be anywhere.
Mhm.
She's flashlights going around. You can't see him, and she finds not only all of her portfolio stuff that he stole, so which made her look embarrassed when she went for the job interview. The knife that he stole, I don't know what, the knife was all wrapped up in a little baggie. The phone, but the reveal of him coming up through the attic and the stairs on the ladder, that gets ruined in the trailer. So that makes me mad, because that was a like, up to this point, you could have just fallen for the fact that she's nuts and just not, I mean, yeah, we did see footprints or whatever, but she takes the paint can, knocks it on his head, and there you are. So now she sees him and makes one hell of a mess out of the house. Paint
Yeah,
everywhere.
she trashes the house.
I know. James is going to come back and be like, dude, I told you to get out.
Yeah.
You are nuts. What we didn't also is he also sent a nasty email to the sister.
To the
Tell
sister.
her
Now
that
that's
through-
another. If I were to send a nasty, even if we had disagreements, like say if I didn't like what you said about Hard Target, and
Right.
I emailed you, I wish you were dead.
Right.
You would think, okay, this can't be coming from him. There's something wrong here. But
Yeah.
nope, her sister takes the email just as it is,
Right.
and slams the door in her face. So I thought that was a little.
Yeah, but now she's got proof that everything that's happening to her is real and that he is still alive, and he's using the suit to basically discredit her and make her insane. So she drags the sister to a public
dinner,
restaurant.
right? Yeah. Now
But
this is
just
where we
take it.
find out.
I have proof, she says. Why didn't you just take it with you? Here's the
Right.
proof right here. This
Because
is it.
he was there. Because she heard
But
him.
she got it.
comment.
I know, but
The thing is, I think that she probably thought, like, I could almost see her train of thought in this scene again. And I think this is where Elizabeth Moss is so good at conveying things without saying them. You could sort of see this train of thought where she was like, he's in the house now. I may not be able to get out, so I'm going to hide the evidence so I can come back for it.
But you don't think that he would have
later.
noticed that it was gone?
He probably would, but if she hid it, that would have.
No, he's too busy stalking her.
but
He's,
what
Well,
would
he
and
doesn't
also the
notice
dog
anything.
barked, so I got the impression that it was the brother. That it wasn't Adrian.
No, I thought it was Adrian in everything except the scene where it's
Agreed.
revealed to be the brother.
Right.
Agreed.
Well, like I said, I called it that it was the brother.
But at the
somehow
dinner
tried to discredit
scene,
her.
it's revealed that the suit not only makes you invisible, but it gives you telekinetic powers as well, because the knife suddenly slashes and it's in her hand within
Yeah, I
a
got the impression
second.
that he just
Yeah, like put it in her hand.
Yeah, but
Right.
then
Did it, put it in
still
her hand.
try to do that. Like when
No,
Chris
it
is
was-
sitting at
it
dinner,
was a
cut
little-
his throat and
and put it in her hands. Yeah, no, but that was a freaky moment. That was
it was
a really. So now all of a sudden her sister's laying there with her throat slashed, and she's just sitting there at the table with a bloody knife now in her hands, and as the patrons around her start realizing what's going on, that they freak out. But the most unbelievable part of that dinner scene was that he said that the food was family style. Not with those tiny tables. It's a tiny table. You can't put more than one bowl of pasta in there. I don't buy it. So, and I make Christina laugh. So, mic drop. I'm out of here. So now she's a killer.
Everything else is believable except for that.
Yeah.
That's not Tony family style, my ass. So now she's a killer. So
Now
bye
she's a
money.
killer. And now she's in the loony bin.
And this is actually something that always freaks me out in movies, is when a person sort of loses their agency completely, right? Because she's telling them this thing, nobody believes her, everybody thinks she's crazy, they're drugging her, they're tying her
She's tied
down.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that's a total nightmare because of the loss of control. So like, I was at this point in the movie, all plot holes aside, I was so invested,
I agree.
because of all of the stuff that happens to her.
Yeah. But again, he's just hiding out in her room the entire time, because once that door is closed, you can't reopen it from the inside. So how is he, there's
he's stuck there too until they open the door. The brother reveals that he's in on it. And that if she comes
Adrian
back
is
to
alive,
him,
we know you're pregnant because he swapped out your birth control pills. Bring the baby to term. We'll make this all go away. She says, screw you, but then steals one of his pens, and it just happens to be a calligraphy pen, because I don't think you can slit your wrist with a Bic.
Yeah,
but she's going to slit her wrist.
Feigns suicide in this.
Right. And then he reveals himself because he tries to stop her. And then this is the most epic hallway fight since Daredevil.
I know this
bloodthirsty killer at this point, because
he's like Bruce Lee
cops
in the suit. He is throwing guys into the wall. He's picking people up.
No, and there's a fight earlier on where she fights with him in the house. And it's very well done, because obviously he's invisible, but she's still getting the living crap beat out of her. She's getting pulled around, pulled by the hair. So visually and special effects wise, that was pretty impressive.
I love that scene though, when the brother comes to the hospital to try to convince her to, sign this paper and you'll get a new identity and all of this will go away and you can go away and live with Adrian and the baby. And she says, "You're the jellyfish version of him."
Yeah, which
everything but the spine, which I thought was so great.
And did you catch that when Sydney was attacked at the end, when he goes back into the house, she has a jellyfish on her sweatshirt?
Yeah.
I was like, that's a nice touch.
Yeah,
just rub it in, dude. Although he did pull a whole lethal weapon by going back to Murtaugh's house to capture the daughter. He went right after Sydney. So, but she somehow escapes. It's a pretty epic fight sequence. But now you're getting into superhero territory. Exactly what Jim said, which is
he disarms all these guards and
shooting themselves. The guns floating around. The suit is malfunctioning, so you're now starting to say, and that's actually one of the worst special effects in the entire thing. When the suit starts to falter, and you start seeing the grid work and whatever, and he shows up, he pops up here and there. But then there's a great scene. She's outside. She makes it outside. It's pouring rain. She's chasing after him. Cops are on the run. She realizes that he's going back to James's house, take out Sydney. And he beats the living crap out of James, by the way.
Now, again, this is the brother. This is not Adrian. It's
right. Yeah.
And I was glad that James and Sydney survived.
Yeah, you really feel bad for them, because they got dragged through hell in this. It's like, dude, I took you in, and I got to deal with all this crap.
Would have been satisfying if James, in between taking punches, you were right, Cecilia. I'm so sorry.
Something, yeah, no.
Well,
crazy.
He does say that later.
Yeah.
Like, there's all these witnesses and everybody saw him, and there's this guy in my living room, and so now we know. And she's like, no, Adrian was actually behind it.
And then her saying, "I told you so. I told you so. I told you so."
Yeah, and that's the thing. So she ends up killing the brother, takes the mask off, and then all of a sudden there's like a SWAT team in the house, and there's Adrian tied up in the basement, and you're like, oh, come on.
I know, and I was like, he cask of Amontillado him, like, he's Montresor.
So that makes you think, though, the whole story of Adrian committing suicide. Like, would they had to have faked a body? Would they have to have faked a funeral?
Yeah, because that takes a lot of background worked, and now all of a sudden he's still alive, and he wants her
who's
back.
running his business?
Right.
It's
who's feeding the dog, right?
yeah, who's feeding the
The
dog?
dog was still in the
Poor
house. Zeus was still in the house. I'm like, who's feeding that dog?
But then it comes down to like the final scene when she goes to confront him, and again, like even though you could see the plot twist coming a mile away, it was still so satisfying to see it happen.
Yeah, the minute she grabbed the suit, I said, she's putting it on. She's putting it on. So
although and then Adrian is revealed to be just such a childish figure that's how I couldn't buy that this guy was the head of a multi-million-dollar company.
His brother kind of laid it out that he just has this charm that he kind of gets his way. The personality. Some people, their personalities are bigger than themselves, and they just, they didn't make it that he was some kind of a genius. He just kind of like talked his way into whatever.
Well, he had to be. He made that suit.
But I mean, like, how is it less convincing than Tony Stark?
Right.
Seriously. Like, you believe Iron Man, but you don't believe this? I mean,
yeah, because this guy is like the lead singer of Maroon 5.
No, I mean, it's the same character.
I can buy that Robert Downey Jr. can play a genius. This guy was not playing a genius. He was playing like somebody.
A douchebag. Yeah, he was. So, but yeah, she gets her revenge. And so you figure out pretty quickly that she's setting him up because James is outside listening. Obviously she's wired, but she knew what she was going to do and pull it off without James knowing, or at least I guess he saw what she wanted him to see is basically what it came down to. She made it look like he killed himself, but she got that suit on and off pretty damn quick.
Yeah, and her hair was perfect after.
Oh yeah, a red suit. Yeah. And then she called 911 frantic. Oh no, he just killed himself. Hangs up the phone. And then she just sits there and watches him gurgling. And then she says, surprise, which was kind of a callback to an earlier. This was better than it has any right to be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was very satisfied. Like, even given all the, like I said, the sort of obvious plot twists and the stuff, I think that she's so good in this movie that totally elevated it like way beyond my expectations. I expected nothing from this film.
Yeah, I agreed. Jim, on the other hand, I think walked away not quite as entertained.
I will say that. I will say I was, like you said, I wasn't expecting anything, just like Christina, and I didn't get much either at the end of it. So
well, speaking of getting, did she get the money in the end?
As presumably,
she still. Yeah. I mean, her sister's dead. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed.
Yeah, it was very satisfying, I think, to see her walk away at the end, like free and just completely free of him.
And you could see again, like you said, she carries this movie in her face for a large part of it, and you see that lift as she's walking away. Her hair is different. It's just it worked for me. I was very surprised. I was very entertained.
So I think Jim
I will let my opinion. I will let my opinion speak by omission. That's
fine. That's fair.
Jim, I didn't like Hard Target. It's okay for you to dislike this movie. Okay.
Wow. I did not like it.
Movie is about taste. Yes. I'm sure that Jim's going to give the lowest buckets here, so maybe we should start with him.
I'm going to go 2 buckets with this.
Ouch.
Because I just got a vision of sitting in a theater. And again, this is my own neurosis. I will admit that. A vision in a theater, sitting in front of a gaggle of 13-year-old girls snapping their gum, talking to each other, and every once in a while watching the movie. Can you believe he said that? So that's who I felt this was.
That was in those girls were in your living room? Like,
in my head, they were. Yeah.
Apparently,
I got issues. I got deep-rooted issues.
These teenager girls, man, they got to you at an early age.
They did.
Dude.
It's a rated R movie, Jim. There wouldn't have been a galaxy.
Oh, they're sneaking in.
I was gonna say they do sneak in. Yeah.
Yeah, they're paying for Onwards, and they're sneaking into it.
Onward. Well, I'll definitely go at least 3.5 on this. I gotta at least match The Hunt. I may want to go a little bit higher on this one, but I'll stick at 3.5.
I'm gonna say like 3 3/4. I definitely liked this better than either of the movies we did last week, and I really just felt Elizabeth Moss's performance was so compelling that it really elevated the material. Like I said, sort of beyond. Even though, like I said, predicted every single plot twist, but it did not take anything away. Normally, when I start predicting things, like I'm out of the movie mentally, but I was still so engaged that, I ended up really liking it a lot more than I thought it would.
It was very well done.
Now, do we think that there's going to be a sequel to this?
Because she walked away with the suit?
Is she going to stalk somebody now?
Leave it, the Invisible Woman? I don't know. Leave it be.
Yeah, I would leave it be.
Right? At this point, you can't even count box office because of what's going on. And, but I think it was a smart choice on their, to walk away from this dark universe, which I thought sounds really good on paper, to end up with an Avengers style movie.
Did you
with all
read
these
that they
monsters.
were, before that they put the kibosh on the dark universe, that they were thinking of Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man? Not in this plot, in a completely different movie.
Okay. I don't know. He's large and in charge. I can't see him being invisible halfway through the movie.
I don't really see the point unless he's going to talk like Claude Rains, in the old film,
or have the bandages with the.
There was a nice little callback when she was in the hospital and the guy was being wheeled out of on the gurney and he was all bandaged up. I thought that was a clever little callback to the original Claude Rains.
You're right. I thought that as well.
Well, Karen Kusama, who directed Jennifer's Body, if you guys are familiar with that movie, she's supposed to direct the new Dracula for Blumhouse. So,
and who's attached to that? Because I think we just talked about that as well.
Besides Karen Kusama, I'm not sure. I don't know if they've announced a cast or not, but I think that if they sort of stay in this vein with like the lower budget, and like Blumhouse is really good at turning out.
No, like I said, they
kinds of
really,
movies.
they are really kind of becoming a powerhouse here. I like it. So check it out. It's on demand.
On demand everywhere.
Yep.
And Jeff and I think it's worthwhile.
Yes.
So what's funny is this brings up the point is that maybe if people have listened to us long enough, that maybe they're becoming attached to our opinions individually. So you may think that you're a Christina. You may think that you're a Jeff. You may think that you're a me.
I agree. I concur with Jim. This was garbage. Most people I associate with on Facebook and social media have all walked away saying that they were very surprised by this. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
So with that, let us go to the concession stand.
Do you have a fish sticks commercial?
That would be so lovely, wouldn't it? If they did, that would just be kismet right there.
Mrs. Gordon's or something? Gordon's Fisherman? Gordon's.
I have to go for the public domain stuff. I don't want to get us in trouble. So
we're already in trouble. Listen, no one's clamped down on us yet.
Yeah, someone would have to listen in order to clamp down.
That's true. That is true.
Thirsty? Take care of that in a delicious way with one of our ice-cold beverages. You'll find your favorite flavor in our big selection of soft drinks. Here's your chance to win some. Your treasure card is valuable and may be worth $100 in cash. Each adult admission or 50 cents purchase at the refreshment stand earns a punch on your treasure card. When the card is completely punched out, present it to the theater manager. He will then open the secret panel on the card, and you will receive your treasure award of $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, or $100 in cash. Other prizes include 2 to 10 passes to our lucky patrons. The treasure card is void if the secret panel is tampered with. Remember, every card is a winner. Thousands of dollars in valuable awards. So be sure to take the treasure card with you when you attend this theater, and to the refreshment stand to be punched with every 50-cent purchase. Every card is a winner.
Okay, we're back, and our co-feature picked today by Mr. Jeff Chandler. So, Jeff, take it away. Why did you pick Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Because I just thought it was a cool fit. I don't know. I nailed it out there in 2 seconds. It's Universal Monsters. I will say, as a kid growing up, I gravitated toward like the giant, larger-than-life monsters, King Kong, Godzilla. Jim, you and I are on the same page. I never cared for Frankenstein's monster or Dracula or the Mummy because they're too realistic. They're too tangible that they could walk into my house and take me. As a kid,
they could bust down your door and stomp on you. Yeah,
Bigfoot, he's larger than life. Godzilla, I can see him coming a mile away. Invisible Man, stay away from me, dude. But the creature from the Black Lagoon is so iconic. In I can't tell you the first time I saw this movie, but I do remember there was like it was like a local library near my grandparents' house, and they were showing it, reel to reel, a bunch of kids sitting around in fold out chairs, and I'm just absolutely memorized. It's a very short, gets to the point. You got a prehistoric monster that's been awoken, and he's looking for some loving, and it's the monster itself is just beautiful. He's beautiful to look at.
The suit is so well realized as well.
It really is. And it's the only Universal monster I can probably say that if they ever build this Universal theme park and they bring all these monsters, he's the only one I'd probably take my picture with and not be afraid to put my arms around. Once we're back out of social distancing.
Well, meanwhile, there would be a Jeff-shaped hole through the wall of Frankenstein approach you.
Yeah, but I could say he's my girlfriend. Yes. He is the original man in a rubber suit.
So I don't know. I've mentioned this book to you guys before, but I don't know if either of you went and got it. The Lady from the Black Lagoon by Mallory O'Meara.
So now this is almost like a Big Eyes type scenario where somebody is taking credit for somebody else's work.
Yes. So the makeup is credited to Bud Westmore. The makeup for the design for the creature, and Bud Westmore was part of like a sort of Hollywood elite family of makeup artists, and Universal was really invested in keeping Bud Westmore happy because his name meant a lot in the industry, even though he himself was actually not that great, sort of in the relative quality in terms of his family. He was actually not that great of a makeup artist. But Millicent Patrick, who had done various work, she had worked at Disney, she had done some other things. She worked as a freelance artist, and at this time she was in Universal's makeup department. She actually did the design for the creature. And the foam latex artist actually said later that he got the designs directly from her. So he said flat out, Millicent Patrick did the design. Yep. Right. But Bud Westmore did not, there were like a lot of things that were happening. Bud Westmore did not like the concept of the film in the first place. He didn't like the creature design. He didn't like a bunch of other things. And then when the promotions for the film were being done, Universal decided to send Millicent Patrick out all across the country to do promotional material with this like sort of Beauty and the Beast idea. Like, look at this beautiful artist who designed the creature. Right. Even though she was told to say that Westmore did it because Bud Westmore wanted credit for the design, even though he hated the movie and hated the design. So there's a lot of interesting information in this book, The Lady from the Black Lagoon. It's sort of a Julie and Julia style narrative where Mallory O'Meara is talking about her quest to sort of find the information as well as the actual biographical information about Millicent Patrick. And she really had a challenge, I think, to find stuff about Millicent Patrick because she's so effectively been erased from
and that's too bad.
The narrative.
Really...
and
it's a lot, huh?
Yeah, it's worth going to look for. I didn't personally, I didn't like the sort of Mallory bits. I didn't find them as interesting as the Millicent bits, but that's my own taste, and I understand that. I'm not as much a fan of memoir as I am of biography, but it's still worth going to find this book if you're interested in the creature from the Black Lagoon. So you should definitely go and look for it. Has a lot. She really like dug out some pretty obscure information for this book.
Yeah, I like right from the beginning. Jim, you mentioned the Universal logo. You get that old school Universal logo, and that music just kicks in. I mean, yeah, you're like.
And I think it's that logo is Universal International, right?
Yes, yeah, it was. Yep.
So William Allen, he was at a dinner party with Orson Welles. Gabriel Figueroa, who was a Mexican cinematographer, started to tell this story about the supposedly real creature, half man, half fish, who lived in the Amazon. And Alan sort of latched on to this idea and wrote a screen treatment that was very, very similar to the plot of King Kong, where he really wanted to like sort of play up this Beauty and the Beast type aspects of the story.
Now, was there a name to this legend creature? Like, I was looking for that and I couldn't find it. Not like a chupacabra or a Sasquatch.
So what ended up happening was this was many years before the film actually got made, and the film finally ended up, the treatment finally ended up at Universal, where it went through like several iterations of the screenplay. And one of the things that happened over the course of the various changes is that the romantic elements of the story were downplayed, primarily because the Hollywood Code people, which was before the film board, that gives out ratings, there was the Hollywood Code where they, basically removed offensive content from films. We're very concerned about implications of bestiality.
Right. Well explored in
it's funny. It takes these controlling boards to go there. That most audience members wouldn't really think of it, because you don't think of King Kong in terms of logistically, how would this happen?
Right. So what ended up happening was a lot of the romantic elements were downplayed in the final version of the script, because and William Allen was always very disappointed by this, because he really wanted like a sort of romance between the creature and Kay, the character is played by Julie Adams in the film.
Well, that's where Del Toro went with Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said in an interview, I can't remember like the precise language that he used, but he's talked about seeing the scene where they're swimming, where she's swimming on the top of the water, and he was swimming underneath her. And he thought when he was a kid that they were in love. You get the impression that he really is. Listen, she's in that three-quarter suit, bathing suit. She's
that
teasing
the creature at least is infatuated.
Yes, yeah. He's like a horny teenager at this point.
Now, this is one of the most iconic scenes for me of movies, period. Not just horror movies or sci-fi movies. That is a beautiful sequence.
Oh, the underwater sequences are very well realized. And the one thing which is, I don't know, I'm sure it comes up in that book, but the fact that the original creature is based on the Oscar statuette was one of the original directives as far as how they wanted this thing to kind of look.
If they had an Oscar statue that looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon,
I'd go make a movie right now just so I could win it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original design was more like, it had no scales. So it looked more like a onesie, with flippers. Yeah.
But the design of the suit, it is so form-fitting.
It's very striking, yeah.
And it doesn't give, it's, like a Godzilla suit, for example.
Right, correct.
You can see the folds of the suit when the actor's walking through it. There's nothing like that here. This is like skin.
Yeah. And his gills are constantly moving. It's a very well realized cinematic
and especially when the scene when the creature boards the boat and he's walking right towards camera and the camera basically goes into his mouth.
Yes, right.
You don't see any giveaway that this is a suit. It's like you're going into a fish mouth, literally.
Yeah.
And that was really sort of a brave choice if you think about it, because a lot of times up to this point when you see these creature designs, they're done in darkness, right? Things are sort of kept in shadow, but they were shooting this under daylight, basically. The design had to be really exceptional so that it could hold up under the bright light.
Yeah. Obviously, if there's anybody out there who's never seen this movie, it is black and white. And I didn't get a chance to really do a deep dive on as much as I wanted to, but I did come across the fact that there's lore out there that there was two different colored suits, one for the above water scenes, and then another colored suit underwater, because the one on top is a green-blue hue, but it didn't present itself very well underwater, so they created a yellow one, and the yellow one is what's shot. I've never seen a full-color photograph of this creature. It's always been a black and white animal to me. So, but that would be fascinating.
Yeah, any
to see.
Merchandising presents it in color, like the action figures that have come available every once in a while. It's green and it's got the yellow down its torso.
Right.
So that's generally what I think of, even though it's a black and white movie. I had the Aurora model kit, which was on my shelf in a prime position all throughout my youth, and I painted it green with the yellow down the torso.
Nice.
But let's get into the story.
Yeah,
It's very simple.
I know.
For what it's worth.
Now, like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a movie to talk about.
There's a story
beyond the
it.
creature.
So the opening is like an Indiana Jones type older character that's on the Amazon, and he's an archaeologist, and they found a skeletal hand of what looks like the remains of a creature. The same hand as our title creature has, and it's sticking out of some rock. And it's defined to the century, and him and some of the indigenous guides that he's got get that hand out, and they bring it back to the States. And they don't really know what it is, but they want to go back to get the full sample of the skeleton that's still there. So they go down the Amazon back to the spot, and they see that the camp has been destroyed. The creature has killed the two guides that have been left there to guard the site. And that's done. You don't see the creature doing it, but you see him, like the shadow entering, and then the screams and the tent going crazy. So they reach the site. They just figure that an animal, like something has killed them. But they dig out the rest of the hill to try to get the rest of the skeleton, and there's nothing there. So they think that the waters have over time washed it away. They figure that this particular spot on the Amazon that they're on leads into a lagoon, and that's probably where the rest of this skeleton is. So they take their boat to that lagoon, and that's where it sits for the rest of the movie. And that's where they encounter the living creature. So that's basically it. The creature becomes infatuated with a one woman played by Julie Adams. Kay is the character's name. He makes several attempts to get to her throughout the movie. And the finale is the hero rescuing her after the creature has actually abducted her, brings her back to his lair. Filmed in Florida. The underwater scenes, it's filmed in a couple of different places in Florida. The underwater scenes are filmed in Wakulla Springs, which I've been. They actually, that's not too far from where my in-laws live. And so we've gone several times, and they take boat tours around, and they kind of point out different scenes from Creature from the Black Lagoon. Like, oh, there's where this scene was filmed. There's where that scene was filmed.
That's cool.
And in the gift shop, they actually have a mock-up, a full torso of the creature. And they've got all this creature merchandise that you can buy in the Wakulla
Capitalize,
Springs.
man.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool to visit. And it's a gorgeous area as well, because apparently the underwater shots were filmed there, and the nature shots where, your vantage point from the boat where you're looking at the alligators, you're looking at the birds going by.
The
that
Rita,
was filmed.
right? Lovely Rita.
The Rita, yes. Push and pull between these humans and the creature. They try to capture it once they realize that there's a living being in there that matches the skeleton. And there's an Invisible Man type scene as well, where one of the crew members gets attacked, and for the rest of the movie he's wrapped up in bandages.
Right.
There's a great scene where he's in bed and the creature's hand is coming through the porthole, and he's trying to tell him,
what's that, mommy?
See, the imagery in this is so indelible. Above all, the underwater swimming sequences,
right?
Because as we all know, the creature played by two actors, one above water and one below water. It's flawless. It's like underwater ballet when you see him swimming in this suit. It's not an actor in a suit when you see him underwater. It's
right.
It's a living
it's a fully realized. Yeah. He actually played the creature in a skit for Abbot and Costello as well.
I read that too. A part of the Colgate Comedy
Hour. Yeah. Yep. Because obviously over the years they met a lot of the other Universal monsters, but they never actually encountered the creature from the Black Lagoon, except for in this skit.
And that's partially because it's so late compared to the other films.
Right.
Yeah. Most of what you think of as the sort of classic roster is like the Wolfman's one of the later ones. That's 1941. So most of them were pre 1941. So Dracula is like 29 or 30, 31, something like that. I can't remember the exact year. It's like pretty. It was the son of the head of Universal at the time who wanted to make this film, I think, because he wanted to bring back the Universal brand, which was horror movies. But I don't know if you guys noticed this. I think I said this to you guys one time, that you could play a drinking game with the number of costume changes Julie Adams has in this movie. It's like basically every time there's a new scene, she puts it on a new costume. Like, Mark just got killed and she changes into shorts and a halter top, and the next 5 minutes. It becomes really egregious in the last
That's funny. Morning attire.
Yeah. They must have cut out the scene where the deckhand is having to carry her big suitcase luggage onto the
steamer trunk.
Yeah.
Right?
So just out of curiosity, this time I took note of how many costumes.
Oh no!
Oh, how many?
Yeah, so in a 79-minute movie, she has 13 costumes.
Wow, that's more than Queen Amidala.
And 6 of them are before the 18-minute mark. So if you were doing a drinking game, you would be wasted before this movie is like a quarter over.
Creature from the Drunk Lagoon.
Yeah. She was out of his league. No way would he have been able to support her.
There's no way. Right, he couldn't keep her in that attire. He had no paycheck. Yeah, do you remember it being released in 3D? Because I think that's what it was when it was first released, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not in color.
Right, because they couldn't pull it off.
Because basically there were some films at the time that were being made in black and white and some that were being made in color, and they ultimately made a decision to make it a black and white film with the 3D instead of a color film.
But I do remember very, very well when they reran this on TV in 3D with those red and blue glasses.
That you had to get at 7-Eleven?
You had to get in the newspaper at 7-Eleven.
Okay, there you go.
And then everybody got home and sat home, and all the kids in school were so excited and watched it. And it was the worst 3D effect that you can imagine.
Well, you're right.
But still, it was such a novelty to be able to do this at home, right?
Right, yeah.
So it was exciting.
That's cool. The guy who directed this, Jack Arnold, right? Is he the director? Because apparently he directed a fair amount of Brady Bunch episodes, tiny in last week's episode. And there's an episode where Bobby actually wears a suit, the creature suit. I don't remember that episode.
So you know what I didn't get, what didn't hold up for me is like the whole idea that the rest of the skeleton washed away.
And just the hand was there?
The hand was there, but the rock was still behind it.
They just kind of broke it off. Yeah. They weren't. Yeah,
how could what was behind the hand have washed away? The hand is still there. But there's been a lot of talk about remaking this, which
it is one of the only, I think, monster movie, the Universal monsters that hasn't been remade numerous times. Right. There was one sequel, Revenge of the Creature, which brought him on land and he wore clothes.
And then The Creature Walks Among Us. There was a
is that the one?
Yeah, there's 3.
Yeah,
maybe that's the one.
Revenge of the Creature was where they bring him to like a SeaWorld type facility.
Yes. Wow, it's been so long. So He Walks Among Us. That's the one where they put him in clothes. That's the one where
they operate on him and they try to make him a human.
Yeah, it's like, stop. Just let him be the monster he needs to be.
1982, John Landis got involved and wanted to produce a remake with 2 creatures, one good and one bad, almost like War of the Gargantuas, right? That's what it sounded like this plot was.
Humanoids
Universal
from the deep.
Canceled it. Universal canceled it because they thought 2 3D movies was too much in one summer, in favor of Jaws 3D.
Yeah, good call.
92, John Carpenter got involved, but never got off the ground from early stages. Offered to Peter Jackson in the mid-90s. That never came to fruition either. Ivan Reitman was interested at one point in remaking it. And then Guillermo eventually was also courted to make a remake, but then he went his own direction, obviously, with The Shape of Water.
Right.
And he made the creature from the Black Lagoon that he envisioned.
Even before that, Abe Sapien and Hellboy.
I have to say this is my favorite as well of the Universal monster. But you can as Christina was saying, this is many, many years, 20 years after the initial Frankenstein Dracula movies came out, about 14, 15 years after the Wolfman. So just saying that, you can tell how much the public took to the creature to make him part of that that he became one of the official Universal monsters.
Yeah, he's like the Fruit Brute of the Blueberry cereal line.
But if Fruit Brute suddenly became the most popular of the cereals, I think the creature in many circles is the most popular of the Universal monsters.
I agree.
He's definitely my favorite.
He's the most sympathetic, I think.
That's arguable.
Yeah, all right, fine.
My favorite is the Wolfman.
Ooh, Wolfman is good too.
Yeah.
Always love a good Wolfman.
And I think it's because the character is sympathetic. So yeah, I would say that to some degree, probably except for Dracula and I think the Mummy, the original Mummy, all the monsters have a kind of sympathetic element. I mean, don't you feel sorry for the monster in Frankenstein?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Especially after seeing Peter Boyle in Young Frankenstein.
Fire.
So this is almost bucket proof.
I know, because I didn't give it buckets because it really is kind of stands on its own.
I would go 4 1/4. I think
I've got 4 if I had to be hard pressed.
I'd say 3 3/4 because it's not my favorite, but I like it a lot, and I agree that the underwater scenes especially are really dynamic. Obviously, like Invisible Man, a lot of the plot doesn't really stand up when you try to inspect it. A lot of the decisions they make seem really random, and a lot of these old films too, people are so quick to believe whatever's going on. There's no
they get right to it, right?
There's no disbelief that this thing could be happening. They see this object in the rock and they're immediately like, look, it clearly is a man that is also a fish. Well, that's not the conclusion I would have drawn from the get-go.
Let me rip it out of the rock here. We'll get a better look at it.
And I noticed there was a little subtle environmental jab as well when they're dumping that chemical into the lagoon to try to, that kills the fish or gives the fish a hangover, as the captain says,
as it says,
to kind of stun the creature. As they're polluting the lagoon with this, Kay just dismissively throws her cigarette into the water at the same time. And then it immediately goes into the creature, looking up at it. It's his home is being invaded by all this garbage that the humans are bringing to it.
Listen, you're bringing this on yourself. I'm going to come up there now. Smack you around.
Yes, and
cool.
I'm
glad
it was
fun to watch again.
Now, Christina, you've got the box set, right? So you've seen the other two. What is your opinion of the two sequels?
I mean, I think that it goes downhill very quickly.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of the Universal sequels are like that, with the exception of The Bride of Frankenstein.
The Bride of Frankenstein is one of my favorites.
Actually, better, I think, than the first movie. But otherwise, for the most part, when you watch the sequels, they start to deteriorate pretty quickly.
Right.
I just don't think that there's a lot of. This is not the kind of character that you can take out of his environment.
No.
So
that's why that third one is just.
Although
poppycock.
The image from Revenge of the Creature that sticks with me is when they bring him back to the aquarium and that one guy is walking him around in circles in the aquarium to try to get the water through his gills. And then he finally wakes up and obviously attacks the guy. But you're just that sequence is just so burned in my memory of just having him do the dead man float on his face. The guy's dragging him around trying to get him to wake up.
So there we have it, Uncle Gilbert.
This brings us to our confessional.
Confessionals.
And another random question. Now, this was inspired by Christina pointing out to us that she saw a custom T-shirt ad that had a couple of T-shirts of long gone department stores from our youth. One by the name of Caldor and the other by the name of Bradley's. Now, I don't know if anybody outside of the Northeast would know what these stores are, if they existed anywhere else, but these were huge stores to us as kids back in the 70s and 80s. So the question is, what store as a kid did you most love to go to? If your parents were going out shopping, what store did you most want them to take you to?
And for me, it was Bradley's because I thought they had the best toy selection.
They did. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. And I would have to say that is my answer as well. Mm-hmm. I so vividly remember the Star Wars aisle alone.
Because it was massive. I'm right there with you, Jim. We had a Bradley's in Bath, New York. And
really? Okay.
I could, if I close my eyes, I can describe to you, because it was all set back. It was in the back end of the store. It was almost like Walmart that has the garden center. Like the toy department was like its own monster. And I mean, maybe as a kid, you know, over romanticize it a little bit, but just that massive block of shelf with nothing but black action figures and toys and puzzles. And yeah, I could close my eyes and see it like it was yesterday.
I remember every single 12-inch on the shelf sat next to the X-Wing fighter and the land speeder and the dewback and the cantina, that little crappy cantina setup that they had, which was cardboard and a plastic base. And it just makes you think how much stuff that they did come out with even back then, that it was just an advertising juggernaut in terms of toys.
And that came out like the year after the movie. They had nothing to give out during.
And then when Empire came out, then you had
then it was everything was just rebranded. Yep. So Bradley's the other one I'll say, which is, this was in Painted Post, which was close to my grandparents, was a department store called Ames. And I pretty much spent my entire youth in there. When you first walked through the doors, there was actually like a luncheonette on the right-hand side. But before you even reached the checkout counters, there was a newsstand on the left-hand side. It was like they sold tobacco or whatever, and it was just this big wall of magazines. And that's where I used to get my fix for. I never really liked Mad Magazine, but Crack Magazine. And we brought this up, I think, when we talked Star Trek, which was, I think Marvel had come out with their own version of Mad called Crazy. And it was the first spoiler I ever saw, which is on the cover is Spock, Bones, and Kirk. And Bones is like, he's dead, Jim. And I think the character in the magazine was like, the spokesman was Obnoxio the Clown. And he's looking right at you and he goes, oh, did we spoil it for you? You know? So they killed it. But that store is also where my brother and I got caught shoplifting. So fond memories. No, I was an unwitting accomplice. So,
you know, it's funny that you say that. I remember one trip to Bradley's that I would always go to the toy section by myself and let my mother or whoever, you know, go do her thing. And I'm like, I'll be in the toys. Just come get me when you're done. And I remember, and I don't know if I got anything that day or not, but we were going to the checkout and this guy came who was working security in Bradley's, and he knew my mother. They were friends from high school or whatever. And he came over, he said hello, and she introduced me to him. And I was probably, I don't know, 11, 10, and it was winter. So I had a big jacket on. And he says, I have to admit, I've been watching your son ever since you walked in, because he looked like he was up to no good.
So, and I'd like to see you open your jacket for a minute.
No,
you didn't steal any K-Tel cassettes.
I did not, no. But I would go often to these stores on action figure hunts. So, of course, that would entail you going to the pegboard where they were all hanging. Right. And like with one finger, like looking for that one elusive action figure that you didn't have, that you would never see in the store. Like I think Yoda was the big one.
Yoda was hard to find.
That I was never able to find.
Yep.
And then if you know, then the years would go on, and then that got replaced by Masters of the Universe. And then the Marvel Secret Wars line had action figures.
Yeah.
Based on the limited series.
Right.
And for some reason, late in the run of the figures, they had two editions. One was Daredevil and one was Hobgoblin, neither of which were in the Secret Wars series at all. But yep, they were part of the thing. So I found Daredevil, and Hobgoblin was my favorite, absolute favorite Spider-Man villain. And I could never find Hobgoblin. And I was convinced that it was a ruse. It was like the McDonald's Monopoly game where nobody won. They only had it on the back of the package, and you could never actually buy it because I never saw Hobgoblin ever.
Ever. To this day, you don't have one.
To this day, I don't have it. I still have my other Secret Wars figures, but what were you after, Christina, in Bradley's?
Oh, I mean, I just like to go. I just remember walking through the toy store. I was like a kid who liked a lot of board games, so they had a lot of board games in there. I mean, besides Bradley's, my favorite store to go to was any bookstore.
And at the time, it would have been Walden Books, right?
I remember going to a bookstore in South Hills Mall when it was still like a mall. And it was like sort of tucked in the corner. It was near the Gap, and it was like not too far away from one of those t-shirt places where you could get the iron-ons.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
they
yeah.
had like a kiosk where you could get the iron-ons. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember like going to Bradley's trying to get something super, super special. I just like to go and look at the toys, you know.
Right.
You know, we had a fair amount of toys, but I also had 3 sisters, so it wasn't like every time I went out I got
You were
a
getting
toy
some,
type of
right.
thing. It was just to go and look at them.
Yep.
But my parents were kind of like I am with my kid, which is they would almost never say no to a book. So
That's the way we've always been. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved going to the bookstore, but I don't remember if it was a Walden Books or not in South Hills Mall.
I'm trying to
Was it
remember if there was a.
Barnes?
Oh, you know what? There used to be a Book and
Borders.
Record in the South Hills Mall, as well as Walden Books. That was towards the Kmart end of the South Hills Mall.
I
Right,
just
there were
remember
two.
going to a bookstore there because I remember buying Dear Mr. Henshaw by Beverly Cleary there. I have a really strong memory of that. But I don't remember what it was called. But to me, it was just the place where we got books, you know,
Right.
which is really all that mattered. But I remember actually getting books at Bradley's too because they had these illustrated classics. I don't know if you guys ever had.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I
hell
had
yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I think it was a little like a Hardy Boys hardcover size thing.
So they were paperbacks. They were about, I don't know. I'm doing this with my fingers. Nobody can see me.
She's making a touchdown with her fingers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me get a little
They
football.
were like, you know, maybe like 4 by 5. They were really small.
Paperbacks.
They were tiny paperbacks. I actually still have a few of
But
them.
they were basically graphic novels. They were comics.
Right. So they had a lot of pictures and they were, you know, modified versions of classic stories. And I remember reading Oliver Twist and Moby Dick and all this kind of stuff that you would not normally read when you were young.
Yeah.
I
had
want
a
this
series
sounds
of
very
Classic
familiar
Illustrated.
to me. I think I had 1 or 2 of these.
Well, Classics Illustrated, they also had a whole like comic book sized adaptations of all the classic movies books.
Mm-hmm.
So, did either of you have a Woolworths near you?
Yes.
I don't remember Woolworths.
There was one on Main Street in Poughkeepsie.
Oh, okay.
Oh, in
yeah.
City of Poughkeepsie?
City of Poughkeepsie,
Yeah.
yes.
No, I don't remember going to that because we lived in the village of Wappingers. So
There you go. I moved up here right at the end of South Hills lifespan when there were still stores actually in there.
Right.
And I used to spend a fair amount of time.
And then, of course, Record World was also a big haunt of mine.
Yeah.
As soon as I got old enough to buy my own records and 45s and what have you, I remember they gave you a card at Record World that you would get stamped every time you bought either an album or a cassette. And then if you got 5, then you got a free one.
Wow,
like
nice.
that.
My hot dog guy does that too.
You know, the other store I like to go to, and it was only in the Duchess Mall in Fishkill. So it was like special trip.
Oh, what was it? What was it?
It was Jeff knows.
Yeah.
Yep, the Hello Kitty store.
Yep, yeah.
Jeff knew. He was like, it's a Japanese thing.
It was right across from Media Play, right?
And when I was a kid, we used to go there so we could get like our Hello Kitty and My Melody.
Yeah,
but no, Christina is saying it was in the Duchess Mall, right?
It was in the Duchess Mall, the one in Fishkill.
Right.
You know, that big one.
Right. The one Jeff is talking about, they had a similar store across from Media Play in the South Hills Mall. Years later.
Yeah.
Oh, no. This was like when I was a kid. Yeah. Because and going to Duchess Mall was a special trip, you know, because it was like 20-25 minutes away.
Yeah, that was Arnott Mall for me.
Yeah. Speaking of that mall, the Duchess Mall, Service Merchandise had a nice little section of toys as well. I remember that pretty well.
Yeah, we didn't go there that often, although I do remember seeing Return of the Jedi at the movie theater that was there.
I saw E.T. at that theater at the Duchess Mall. Right next to the Dream Machine arcade was the movie theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dream Machine was across from the theater in South Hills Mall, too.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah, as if they thought kids would come out of the movies and want to go to the arcade.
Yeah.
You know what else I remember finally? This just makes me think of, there was a nursery called Herman's.
Oh, yeah.
And at Christmas and Halloween, they would have a walkthrough with like animatronic figures, and it was it was something to look forward to every year to go to Herman's.
Yeah, I remember going to Herman's, and I remember meeting Santa at Herman's. Yeah, getting my picture taken with Santa there. I remember that.
Yeah, sadly, it's an empty lot now, is what hers was.
Memories.
Yes.
Days of
Stores
youth.
that we can't go to anymore.
Yes.
Sadly.
So with that, hope we haven't bummed you out.
No, if anything, we've just sparked some massive memories. Someone out there's going, I still remember going to
And hey,
Burgers.
if you've got, this is a great opportunity. If you've got your own store from wherever you are listening from that you want to tell us about, by all means, please do.
Yeah.
TMI podcast 2018 at gmail.com if you want to email it to us, or just take a listen to everything else we've got going on after the show. You'll hear our Twitter feed. You'll hear our Facebook address, our email, and our website.
We got a lot going on here.
Yeah, we do.
We try.
So
Keeping
next
people
week,
entertained.
what do we got going on for next week?
What is next week?
Could it be Atypical Carpenter Week?
Atypical.
This is a big episode. This is a very, very special episode.
I hope people aren't disappointed when they hear it.
How could you? How could
build it up?
So this is the brainchild of one of my household's weird dinner conversations, and it is 2 John Carpenter films, but we selected 2 non-horror films, which is why we're calling it Atypical Carpenter Week, and it's going to be Big Trouble in Little China.
Woo!
And Starman.
He's a starman. Very cool. That's all I got.
That was like nails across the chalkboard for a Bowie fan, Jeff.
I was watching Jim's face change.
Like,
Let me try it again.
But no, this is great because quite often we're very pigeonholed into what we pick. It's all based around the main feature that we're covering. So, we've gone over 100 episodes. Big Trouble in Little China is a huge movie for anybody's childhood or past, right? Yeah. We've not covered it because it hasn't come up naturally that we could pair it with something that would make sense. This is the main feature next week is Big Trouble in Little China. And along with it, of course, another great John Carpenter movie that I haven't seen in a really long time, and I'm looking forward to watching it again, is Starman.
Yeah, I can't tell you the last time I saw that.
Love Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that again.
And he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for Starman, which is the only Carpenter film that's ever been nominated for an Academy Award.
And if you ever think that Karen Allen did nothing but Raiders of the Lost Ark, then you are sadly mistaken.
True. That is true. So do you think we're going to actually make this into a theme?
I think maybe we should step up and join in on Christina's game here and come back with our own director's picks.
Atypical. I like it.
I don't know if Atypical Carpenter is perfect for this theme, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be atypical for your pick.
Oh, I think
it could be.
I went atypical.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go atypical.
I think
that was the challenge.
I think it's interesting to sort of see when directors drive out of their lane. And challenge themselves to do something different. So I'm very curious to see what you guys pick.
As always, stay safe. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys again next week.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Creature from the drunk lagoon.
Yeah.